Welcome, gentlemen, everybody. Welcome to virtual tour, Impact Virtual Tour with Mickie James. Please, as you know, we all had already had one session earlier with Pinder. So we'll go follow the same format. Everybody can please introduce yourself, which publication, and you can ask two questions. And if time permits, we will circle back and take it forward again. Yeah. Shamil, we have you here first. So
Hi. So we have Vishal Roy from MMA India. We have Ishan from Essentially Sports, and we are waiting for one more sports manner. So do we have somebody from sports manner here?
Hello, Mickie. Hi, this is Ishan from Essentially Sports, and it's really a surreal feeling to have this conversation with you right now because I've grown up watching you, so it's really different for me. So right off the bat, I want to ask Cardona and Chelsea Green, attacking you 2 days ago to close Impact. So, what do you think, is up with Chelsea and Matt, and why do you think they are going after you and your husband, Nick Aldis?
Well, clearly ego. I mean, it takes a big man to put his hands on a woman for sure. They really takes a big man to try to do that. And it's not something that my husband is ever going to stand for. And he's fortunate that he did it when he knew that my husband wasn't going to be there, because if he was, he would have killed him. But however, I digress. I think that this whole thing with Matt and Chelsea has really escalated to a level, and it wasn't something, I really anticipated, because I thought that Chelsea and I were friends, and I'd been looking out for her. And I, as a professional and as, being in the industry as long as I have, boys will be boys and they're going to have their things. And, I obviously had so much on my plate, from trying to be a great mom and represent the Knockouts Championship and, also head up the women's division. And so I have a lot on my plate. So, but I did feel like I made specific time for Chelsea and really was trying to look out for her, because I empathized with her in the sense, and I really respected the fact that, side by side, kind of paralleled. Our careers are obviously very different, but she's been killing it and she's been on a roll, and I really, really appreciated it. But I also thought I was a big enough woman and I was a grown up that I could look past our husbands' differences and let them kind of figure it out and handle it. And now it's gotten personal, because that's just, one thing my husband will never ever stand for is a man putting his hands on a woman, ever. He's very traditional. It's the way I was raised that way. I don't think it's ever okay. So don't get me wrong, I will defend myself against a man. It's just that he caught me off guard. He obviously, they got me hook, line, and sinker. I was clearly, even in the match, with Tasha, I was so, when I realized what had happened, when I realized that Chelsea has just kind of come down, and, even though I'd asked her to kind of stay, I didn't really want, I was worried about her arm. I legit thought.
In a way, she did not interfere. In a way, she did not.
She did not interfere, but she was a massive catalyst in, and me kind of, because when I looked up, I was just like, what, this is really happening right now, pretty much in shock. And it was already a 2-on-1 fight to begin with. And so it was just kind of I felt like I was being taken out to just pasture and shot for a minute. And that's kind of what it felt like. And, yeah, I mean, I'm heartbroken over that. I was more devastated because I should have known better. I've been in this business a long time. I was most because I had bent over backwards in a way to probably that wasn't even the best for me to look out for Chelsea. And this was how she felt the whole time. And it's just I wish I had mentors in the business, a female mentor. I had Amy, I had Lita. And then obviously once I got into it and had more of a stronger female, but there weren't a lot of women training. So I'd always wished I had that. That's why Empower was so important to me. That's why, even the women of the veterans, women of the locker room, setting a very good example, and showing the women, to streamline it, to make it easier for them, like that's kind of the whole point. And I just took a lot of time, and I put a lot of time and energy into cultivating, that relationship with Chelsea. And I just felt like it's been a long time since I've been outplayed in the mind, if you will. It's been a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. But you finally get your chance for revenge, multiverse of matches. We're going to watch it on Eurosport in India. And in that, you're finally teaming up with your husband. So Nick Aldis, Mickie James versus Matt Cardona and Chelsea
So
Green. So if
you
my
have to get
statistics are
all
not...
this. That's how you have to do it. All
Yeah.
this.
All this. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
That has a better ring to it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Go
so I want to ask you,
ahead.
if my stats are not wrong, you guys, you and Nick have only teamed once in 2016.
Yeah.
So how different is it going to be, the preparation, and because these two are teaming up and these two have been with each other for a very long time now, and they're, constantly there on shows. Chelsea is, helping Matt win matches like we saw on
Right.
NWA show. So how are you and Nick preparing for it?
Well, and it's different because I'm very aware of, like, my husband's very good. He's very good. He was the longest reigning NWA World's Heavyweight Champion of the modern era. He's a national treasure. I mean, I can go on and toot and toot and toot my husband's horn all day. I think the difference is most people who are like couples in wrestling, they always align. They're always seen together. And we, from day one, and we obviously, that was a very personal match. Thank you, with the whole thing the last time we teamed together, but that was probably one of the last times we've actually teamed together, because we are, I think our relationship is different because I have always wanted to, because it's always already hard as a female, but to be taken seriously. I never wanted to credit my career off of my husband's career or a relationship or anything like that. My career was very important to me, and I wanted my career to be my career, with nobody I was leaning on, nobody that I was, and it's obviously amazing for me, but it can be to a fault as well, because obviously Nick was not there at Impact when this all went down. And Nick is very much the same. Nick came over from the UK to make a name for himself. He had already been wrestling, but he was on part of UK Gladiators as well. And he was a star. He's a star in the UK, and he's come over and was like done so much. And I think that we both understand the importance of having your own name and your own career, and not based off of the success of your counterpart's career, of how good or bad they're doing, because we also have a son, and we also have a life outside of wrestling that we need to, be able to have a healthy relationship and not talk about wrestling all day, every day about things, like that's one of the things why it's really great how our, even our careers, and he's full-time NWA, and I've been over here at Impact, but I still am at NWA, and now he's coming over to Impact for the multiverse. When it works, but we don't need each other to be stars. That's the difference. We are our own stars, and when we come together, we are mega stars. That's the difference maker, right? So
Yes.
It's bigger than Power Couple, baby.
Absolutely, it is bigger than Power Couple, and I grew up with the British invasion and Magnus per se. So it's a very surreal feeling, right? Because I think it's directly after Magnus, he's coming back after a very long time to Impact Wrestling. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
It's a long time coming, and like you said, you've been there in NWA, you've helped them out. Impact Wrestling, you're not just a wrestler, but you help out all the young athletes, and Impact has a hell of a roster. So,
Incredible
in
roster.
the women's division, in the knockouts division, who do you think is that next big knockout who will take over the wrestling world?
Well, clearly Tasha Steelz, I think. I've said this, and I hate now that I'm she can keep my championship warm for a little while I go take care of this Chelsea Green business. I've, without a shadow of doubt, I think that in the last couple of months, have really truly seen her for the star that she is. She's incredible on the microphone. She's got tons of charisma, personality, pizzazz. Like, she just checks all the boxes for me. And I'm all about character and personality and over the top. So I get her, and I feel like we've had some pretty incredible matches. And I think that in the last, couple months, she's really leveled up her game, and she's obviously leveled up to world championship material, so kudos to her. I will always say that my first feud coming back there with Deonna Purrazzo, Deonna is probably one of the greatest wrestlers I've ever shared the ring with, male or female. Like, she's just that good. She's very, very good. And, but then there's a lot of stars in the making, and there's like a lot of people in the back. I think Jordan Grace is incredible. Not only is she like the power lifter, and she kind of has been having those matches and taking beatings from Matt Cardona, which I'm like, but she's been dishing them out too. She's been dishing them out too, for sure. But I think, I always say, like, kudos to Gail Kim and kudos to Impact for putting Gail Kim in charge, for putting that love and respect on her name and putting her in charge of this incredible women's division that has really always, I always say that the knockouts have gone underappreciated for being ahead of the curve before it was a trend, before it was a hashtag of having all of these incredible groundbreaking matches and moments. From myself, I wanted to say Lisa, because Lisa and I do our show called TV every Wednesday with SoCal Val. I wanted to say Lisa, but Tara and I had the the cage match, which was the main event of the show when in like 2010, 2011, right in that kind of area when I first came over there. And I remember when they told us that we were going to be the main event, I'm like, oh my God, because the only other time I had ever remembered the women being the main event was when Trish and Lita were the main event in their kind of hardcore match. That was the only other time that I could ever think that the women have been the main event. So to me, this was a massive, massive deal. And it was a big deal. But the women were getting 2 segments. They had the women's tag team championships. And then you think about like all the stuff. There's been no limitations for the women for the knockouts. You're not looking at like, oh, we can't do that because you guys are girls. No, it's like, it's always like, yeah, let's do this. What's best for business? What's best for the story? And there was never the question of like, oh, you guys are the girls. Maybe we'll save that for the boys. There was never that. So that's one thing I'll always love about them.
Yeah, it's safe to say that the Impact
Ishan,
knockouts knocked it out of the park.
Ishan,
thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, if you don't mind, we'd like to give other
yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Mickie.
No worries, of course.
Sudipta, who would like to have next?
Is it fine if I ask questions now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Please.
Hi, Mickie. I would just like to tell you that you're one of my favorite female wrestlers of all time. And growing up, I used to play a lot with your character in the SmackDown versus Raw game 2009. So having said that, is there any plans that Impact Wrestling or even you as just like a professional wrestler are coming up with for a new wrestling game, perhaps outside of, say, I know that All Elite Wrestling is developing their own professional wrestling games right now, and WWE does their own thing. So,
actually, yes, to answer your question, I don't know, but I know that Nick and I have just signed a deal with it's a new one that's coming out. It's not out yet, and I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it. But we've just signed a new deal for a wrestling video game. And Nick is also, he's done the one where it's downstairs, actually. They've sent us the whole big thing. So there are certainly some more independent games, coming out. As far as like Impact having its own game, I don't know about that, because but I think that those options, I think now because technology has moved so quickly, that there's really a lot of different options for wrestlers to be in different types of games, because I've had several video game offers since leaving, leaving just like a year ago. I've had a couple different video game offers, but we did just sign. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I'm supposed to say, but yes.
That's okay.
What is
We
the name
won't
of
try.
this game?
So speaking of leaving, uh, Multiverse of Matches takes place on the 1st of April, which is just the day before WrestleMania weekend. And I know that you had your ups and downs with that company, but I'm pretty sure that WrestleMania is a time where everybody in wrestling gets excited, right? And you've been a part of some of the greatest, pardon me if I'm saying this wrong, divas wrestling moments back in that era. And you've made some more moments in the WWE after re-signing them with them again, right? So what was your personal favorite WrestleMania moment? It could be something backstage or in the ring, just a conversation after a match or something.
No, my favorite WrestleMania, and I also came in at the tail end of the golden era, where it was still the women's division and it was women's wrestling and the women's championship before the Diva. Like I was I was there through a lot of like different transitions, so I was very blessed to kind of come in because I immediately was put, against Trish. And I'll say that WrestleMania, regardless what anyone says, like I've done some really cool things in my career, but no feeling aside from just coming back in the Rumble just recently, there's never been a feeling that has matched the feeling of that first WrestleMania against Trish and all the emotion and everything. Because I think it was, that was the epitome of me achieving the dream, like that was it. That was that moment, that culmination of all the things, for the years it took to get there, from the people saying you're never going to make it, from stealing gas because I couldn't afford it, to eating out of tuna cans and peanuts because I was an indie wrestler and a weekend warrior and that's all I could afford, to, sleeping at rest stops, to, just being told that I was never going to make it, or that, what was I doing, constantly questioning, my value, my worth, my dream. And then up and leaving and having to live in Louisville for what I thought was going to be 6 months that turned into almost 3 years before I debuted on television, which is fine. I wouldn't change a moment of my story, but at the same time, that moment, that payoff, that, there's nothing that can take away that emotion that I felt in all that. And I was so blessed to have Trish to help guide me in that very first storyline, because she took her time and she gave me, irreplaceable kind of knowledge and value that at the time, I was still sponging and I was learning so much, and I was just grateful to kind of be there. But I look back and I go, she really helped me, both as a television performer, but immediately out of the gate, I was leveled up to that level of her and Lita as they were on their way out, and as they were, thinking about their own transitions, and they were like the last of that real locker room, like, and then the Diva era started to kind of filter in. And so it was like a whole new mindset and a whole new era of, this is what we want from women's wrestling, and we want it to be more in this vein. And it wasn't something that, because I felt like we had worked so hard to get away from it, it wasn't something that I was immediately in love with. But then I did recognize the fact that we started to get a very strong young female audience that we never really had before, so I was a little girl that was a wrestling fan. So I was really kind of unaware of the fact that we really didn't have like a lot of young ladies watching the product, and really, because they didn't have as much to connect with. And I think that was kind of what that Diva era was to try to connect with the younger female audience. And it worked. It absolutely worked. So it's just been, a crazy ride, because it was like, that was such a serious, and I dedicated everything to wrestling. And I only took modeling classes just because I felt so out of place, because in the Diva era time, I felt like that's all they were hiring. They weren't hiring wrestlers, almost to the point where I was like, maybe I went about this the wrong way. Like if I would have went for modeling, which I'm 5'2", it probably wouldn't have worked out for me. That this journey would have been a lot easier for me, because it seems like all these girls are debuting and they've never even wrestled before. And I'm trying, and then I remember being in Louisville going like, I have to teach them how to like, I'm waiting to go up to television and I'm teaching some of these girls how to grab a headlock and how to do all the things. And they're already on television. I'm like, what am I doing? Why is this happening? But yeah, but some of those girls are my greatest friends and I love them to death and I wouldn't change any of it. So it was a powerful kind of thing. Yeah.
That's great to hear from you, especially after the fact that, WWE really changed the global perception of women's wrestling on a mainstream scale, if you're really talking about it, ever since they got the 4 horsewomen in there, and then they had the Evolution pay-per-view.
I will say, hold on, let's back up.
Yeah.
So fans have forced the hand of every company to step up and respect women's wrestling and hold it to the same standards and the same love and respect as they do the men's wrestling. I think that has been the same difference maker. And when we talk about Impact was always doing that, and it goes unnoted and unapplauded a lot of times, but they were always knocking down barriers for their knockouts division. But it came to a point where the women's wrestling scene on television, from that company, especially with the girls were having, and I was a part of them, 8 women, 4-minute tag team matches. And, I'll never take back into some of the things of like, and I've talked, to a lot of the girls about it, about like the bra and panty matches or the water gun fights and stuff. They were a lot of fun. They were fun because they were like a night off for me, because I wrestled all the time, so it was kind of like a night off in that sense. But it also was very humbling a lot of times in gorilla position, when the only matches that would really get cut on time if somebody else ran over was the girls match. And we would have 10 minutes. I remember having with Gail Kim having like I think originally we had like 12 minutes, and we get to gorilla, and because everything had ran over, we're standing there and they're like, you have 4 minutes with entrances, meaning we have 2 minutes for a match. And it was very like, wow, like we could have shaved 30 seconds here, 30 seconds there, a minute here, a minute there, but instead we just took it all from this match, because and it just was a real eye opener of like where we kind of sat in the level of importance. And it wasn't until the fans kind of stepped up and said, hey, we respect these women and we know what they're capable of, because we're getting to see it on other companies. We're getting to see what the women are capable of. Impact. We know that what these women are capable of, because at this point now fans have evolved, right? So they're going back and they're researching and they're doing their research, and they're like, we've seen what these girls can do. We've seen what these girls can do prior to coming there. So we want to see we want you to show what they can really do. And I think the standards from a fan's perspective and the expectations from the fan's perspective and the vocality of it all is what changed how we push women's wrestling on every level, from every country.
I agree, ma'am. I was just going to make the point that being from a country
please,
like India...
Can you hold for a minute, Anusham? Yeah, can we have somebody else now, if you don't mind, like to shift, because we're running short of time.
Yeah.
All right. So no worries. Thank you so much, ma'am.
No, of course.
Vishal?
Hello, am I audible? Yeah. Hi, Mickie.
Hello.
It's such an honor to interact with you.
Thank you.
Actually, my first question is, I'm Vishal from MMA India show. So my first question is that, speaking about Matt Cardona attacking you, the intergender single matches are not common these days. So if you get the chance to face him, would you face him in a single intergender match?
Well, I mean, obviously I would face him if I know he's coming. I think, intergender matches are one of this is a new thing. That it's not a new thing, because we've always had like intergender tags, or like with the right story. We've had those kind of matches, and now it's become more prevalent where guys are just taking on girls in fights, which is cool. I just think that there's now more than ever an immense amount of female talent that I haven't had a chance to square off against. So I would prefer to wrestle them because I'm a female wrestler and I got in the business to help elevate women's wrestling. So I would prefer to wrestle women that, you know, to help them shine and to help the women's division. That's just my personal opinion. But if I need to, you know, give Matt Cardona a hardcore country kick, I'm not above it. I'm certainly not above it.
My second question is to you is that, you know, India has a huge fan base of pro wrestling, and they are, of course, they're a big fan of Impact Wrestling as well. So there are many aspiring women wrestlers in the country here in India. So what's your advice for them? How can they break out to the huge promotion like Impact Wrestling?
My first is always to say to find a good school and to find, you know, and a good school that from someone who's, which is probably a bit more difficult over there, I think. But to find a school with credibility that is going to teach the right way, and that sometimes requires moving to find a school, a good enough school, you know. I'd say it's so different now because everybody's path. There is no perfect way to making it. Like I've seen models walk in and have incredible careers. I've seen football players walk in and have incredible careers. Honestly, like most people who become superstars got into wrestling because they love wrestling, right? Like, and they trained for it. But there are those occasional people who have come from different backgrounds, you know. It's a really hard because there's no direct advice for any one person because everybody's journey is so different, right? But I think finding a good school is paramount. I think practicing your promos in the mirror, for me, that's one of the big, that's how I was able to get my promos to a place where I can feel it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My next question to you is that you have had a legendary career, there's no doubt about it, and you have several achievements. So is there any regret you hold in your career?
I have several regrets. I have lots of regret. I don't have regrets in the sense of, you know, we all make choices. We make choices. And I don't regret my decisions because I wouldn't be sitting where I am today. But I do sometimes go like, oh, maybe I wish I hadn't done that, in a sense of like, maybe it wouldn't have prolonged, you know, we sometimes we can get in our head, and this is just a human thing. This is not a wrestling thing. This is whatever. We become our worst critics, and we can talk ourselves in and out of every situation if we let it and look at all the possibilities. And if you spend so much time like analyzing it and worrying about all the things, you miss out on the fun. You know, you can miss out on a like life is meant to be lived and laughed and loved. Like that's one thing with losing my sister 2 years ago. She was 33. And I was kind of in between WWE, and I was at WWE and I was taking care of my sister full time. Both back and forth. It was a lot. But the one thing I was like, God, life is so precious and so short that we take a lot of things for granted and we bitch over those things that don't matter. They don't matter, you know? So, you know, take time to enjoy the little things because they really add up and they really are more powerful than you ever can imagine. So I just got super emotional. But
I'm sorry I made you emotional about it.
It's okay. It's okay. But it was very humbling, you know, it was a very humbling experience for me. And I think a lot of people don't know that either about my last, you know, my last year there, is that I was taking care of my sister full time because she had ovarian cancer. And I was going back and forth and looking for a home in Nashville. And that's what I say. You don't know what people are going through, you know? So it's special. It is special. Damn it. Sorry.
I'm sorry I made you emotional.
That's okay. It's
Vishal,
early.
My
thank,
last
Vishal,
question
It's
my last
early and I
question.
haven't had enough coffee, clearly.
Vishal, thank you. We're running short of time, so we need to shift to the last Shamil.
Alright.
Sorry,
All right.
because
Thank you for taking my questions. Yeah.
So we just had the three of them, Vishal, Ishan, and Anshuman. I think all the three of them have asked question. So I think if we have some time, we can take additional questions if they
we
have
can
any.
do one more question. We have another couple of minutes, so I can take one more question. Yeah. So
So anybody?
Is it? Yeah, I have one question. Ma'am, I would like to close this on a positive note. The sign behind you says empowered women, right? And so far, you are the only person I've known who has actually taken the initiative and been involved in two all women's pay-per-views in two completely separate professional wrestling companies, right? And NWA Empowered was a great show. I watched it. I really liked it. And the fact that women's wrestling has come so far just puts a really big smile on my face. My question to you is, can we expect NWA Empower to be an annual thing? Is there any plans going forward to have another all women's pay-per-view? Are you planning to look at maybe say involving Stardom into your plans? Because I know that Joshi wrestling is like a huge thing in Japan, and it's just great when every wrestling company comes together and puts on supercards like Worlds Collide and stuff like that. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you what your plans are going forward, being such an influential figure in the women's wrestling scene.
Thank you. I was really blessed with Empower. I was blessed that Billy had the faith and the trust in me to be able to put that show on. And I think that it was really awesome to be able to utilize my relationships with Impact Wrestling. And the idea, obviously last year's Empower, the first ever Empower, it was also in the middle of the pandemic. So I wanted to get people from out of the country here, and it was very difficult, like almost just impossible. So obviously as the pandemic and regulations are kind of relaxing, I'm hoping to open the doors for more involvement. But it was really awesome to see every company kind of come together and in a very professional way to highlight their women and to it was a special night, and it was a special night for myself and for every woman. Like, it was an emotional night and it was a powerful night. I can't say that there was a woman that left that show, or a man, because the reality is that the NWA, the men's locker room, was there in attendance cheering these women on. And it was a great night for wrestling, but as a whole, not just women's wrestling, for wrestling, because you saw these companies come together for the first time and really lift up and acknowledge all of their women. And it was really special. And I was grateful that I was able to be able to pull it off. I was grateful that, that with the talent that I chose and that chose to be a part of it, because it was magical and it was a magical night. And, I know that there's always been women out there, that's the cool thing, is that we have a lot of powerful women pulling for the women these days, which is why the bar has been raised so high. And it's really cool. And I have nothing but respect for anyone, who does that for us. And I will continue to lift up women's wrestling and fight for women's wrestling for as long as I'm breathing, because that is the business that I got into. And that is the business that I marked back then when I was, little Alexis Lurie, and getting, it was a journey. Let's just say that. Not as many opportunities or being taken seriously or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to change the way that people look at women's wrestling in this business. And this was 1999. I was like, but I have to change the way people look at me first. I need to change the way that people look at me. And in doing so, I'm going to change the way they look at women in wrestling. And that's why I trained with men. And I trained and trained and trained because I wanted to work like one of the guys. So I wanted to be better than the guys. So then they would stop going like, oh yeah, she's okay. they're okay for a girl, like, which was a compliment, but it's like a backhanded compliment. So I just think the bar's been raised to the point so much now, and now you have all kinds of things from Stardom, and like you said, to Shimmer, and Shimmer was doing it over here, and Shine, and for the ladies, and you know, the knockouts have always been killing it, and they had knockouts, knockdown, and the one night onlys, and you know, even Evolution was such a great night. It was so powerful, and I was so grateful to be a part. But it's like I felt like the people in the locker room and everybody was like dying for that second one. Like, please, like, when is the second one? It just never kind of happened, and not that it never will. But when I spoke to Billy, the idea for Empower was always like based on the success and based on how well the first one did. We would always, the idea was always to make it an annual event. So obviously we've spoken about that, about number 2. So we'll see. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but
yeah. Thank you, Mickie. Sorry, guys, we'll have to end this right now. So thank you, everyone, for joining, and Mickie for a wonderful sharing of moments with us. Yeah.
Sorry, I got so emotional, guys. I get sorry. Thank you for your questions, though, and I'm sorry if I was very long-winded. It seems to be my way.
Thank you. I'll be ending it.
All right. Okay. Bye.